Welcome to another episode of Rebel Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Katie.
I'm your other host, Michelle. Welcome back. We want to talk about, or at least I want to talk about, Katie can react to, House of the Dragon Season 3 premiere was Sunday. It's in the Game of Thrones universe. The window I kind of want to look at, or kind of like the scene or the whatever it is. Do you know anything about Game of Thrones? Like, do you know anything like that there are dragons, like that it's...
Okay, so full transparency, I tried to watch it, not when it came out, like that was, I don't know when that was, but I tried to watch it whenever it came out on the streaming services, and I could not get past the misogyny. I just couldn't do it. It was just like, hit you over the head. Every second word, and I was just like, I get it. I get it's fantasy. I understand it comes from books, whatever, but I was just like, oh, I'm out. I couldn't do it. So full transparency, I get the creativity of it. I really do, but oh my God. So no, I couldn't do it.
Okay, well that's kind of like
Yes.
you're really on theme for what I wanted to talk about. Because
Oh, okay.
I am.
Okay, and I was just gonna say, like, full transparency, if you guys can't tell, I had no idea what we were gonna talk about today. So this is very new and completely the unvarnished truth. So go ahead, Michelle.
Yes. So yeah, it's like obviously spoilers for basically any House of Dragon and obviously for the premiere. But so Rhaenyra is in theory queen, right, of this realm. Although she's basically fighting
Okay.
to get back on the actual throne. There's a lot of kind of complicated stuff about that. But for her people who agree that she is
Mm-hmm.
queen, right? That's kind of like the power that she has. And she has a dragon. She's a dragon rider. And
Okay, hold on, let me
there's
just ask. Listen, wait, do they agree that she's queen, or is it more like
yes,
every
they
other
do.
monarchy where you don't get a say and like I am the monarch, and if you don't like it, I'll kill you, kind of, I guess.
I guess there's a bit of that, but no, I would say that, she was basically her father's heir, right? Like chosen by him, but then was undermined
Uh-huh.
because she was a woman, essentially.
Uh,
Mhm.
right?
And it kind of caused this like rift, this like civil war almost, right? So it's like there's a
Okay.
certain side
Okay.
that is they call it kind of Team Green versus Team Black, and Rhaenyra's Team Black, right? And so
Okay.
they're battling with Team Green, just to kind of keep it simple. And so there's like this
Yep.
naval battle that's happening. They get word of it. Rhaenyra's like, all right, I'm getting on my dragon. I'm gonna go like fight for, my people fight this battle. And her son, who's kind of been fighting with her on and off about this, but it's just like, you're too valuable. Like if we lose you, this whole thing's over. Like send me. You should just not go, right? Basically. And she's not agreeing with him. So what he decides to do is lock her in her room and convince
Sorry.
her,
So wait, her son locks her
yes,
in her room, overrides her feelings both as his mother, but also as the queen. He's like, nah,
yep,
I know better than you, and locks her in her room.
guard guy to not let her out, essentially. And long story short, he goes into battle and he dies. Like him and his dragon both get killed. I've seen the argument made, in a podcast that I watched that like that was proving his point because it was too dangerous because he died. Like she could have died, but regardless, that's not necessarily the point I want to talk about. So the point is the idea of like theoretical power and like practical power and like the power of like privilege or that kind of thing and the power of prejudice and this sense of like that she's fighting this battle all the time, right? About her being a woman. And like
Yep.
she's infuriated by this. She's pounding on the door till her knuckles bleed. She's like shredding her dress with
Mm-hmm.
like a knife and like I'm very unhappy. And they give her a quote that actually is something from Queen Elizabeth that they pulled from. I'll read it to you and you can tell me what you think of all that I have said so far. So she says, I may appear to have the weak and feeble body of a woman, but I possess the heart and spirit of a king. And so the other thing I was thinking about in the context of this is also like, the idea of like you have to, in order to prove that you're powerful, you have to do it as a man would, right? Like you have to express your power in the way that is socially acceptable. And like the idea of framing it as a king versus a queen and all of that. So thoughts?
I cannot talk about this without the intersectionality of gender and classism and misogyny and the patriarchy and all the rest of it. So this will be a relatively political take, I guess. I mean, I think it's more sort of a humanist one. I reject all of it. I just reject it out of hand. All of it. I find everything about it super offensive. This is the misogyny that I couldn't get past. The mythologizing of this kind of, I mean, literally toxic masculinity, like toxic to the point where she has to present herself as a man and the man who apparently knows best, despite being her son. Like the insultingness of, that's not a word, but the insult of that I find pretty compelling. And then he gets himself killed anyway, because of course he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, I don't know, I didn't see it, but that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know why in 2026 we are celebrating and watching this. Like, honestly, that's where it comes for me. Like, I understand the desire for escapism, especially now. We've talked about this in terms of like what's actually happening in the world. But for me personally, I think what I'm noticing is that I have increasingly less and less tolerance for things that, whether it's supposed to be entertainment or whatever else, that sort of honor or exemplify classism. So, like the whole monarchy piece, I find reprehensible. I'm not down with that at all. This idea of entrenched misogyny as part of the patriarchy. And it's almost like it's presented as, well, this is just how it is. It's like, it isn't unless we choose to perpetuate it. I think that I'm confused more than anything. I'm confused about what that says. Maybe it says something, maybe it says nothing. I don't know about like the broader culture. Why does this appeal to people? But I mean, if it's not too hard a question, like I'm curious, why does it appeal to you? Like, because I know that, not to reveal too much, but I'm fairly certain all the things that I was just railing against, I'm pretty sure I know your position on these things. And I would consider you to be a pretty progressive individual. Would you agree? In terms of
Oh yeah.
politics and whatever else? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm fascinated by the integration's not quite the right word, but like how do you square that circle, I guess, without judgment. I'm actually like legitimately curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely am coming at it from a different point of view than you are, not in terms of like the politics,
Yeah.
but in terms of like what interests me about the show and things that I even struggle with about the
Yeah.
show. But I would say like that was one of the things that was hard for me to get into Game of Thrones, and like there was moments
Hmm.
where it's like, especially in the earlier seasons where there was a lot of like rape, kind of like very explicit sexual
Hmm.
violence, which they have
Hmm.
gotten away from. Very
Ca-
casual.
casual sexual violence. Yep.
Yeah, that like it was difficult to watch, definitely. I think I mean, to say dragons oversimplifies it, and not to be like that, that justifies watching misogyny or whatever. I love fantasy. I think that's kind of what kept me
Yeah.
hooked or kept me interested. It was also, it's a very well written show. It's well produced. It's visually well done. It's well acted. Like, it's just like very high tier in terms of like execution. And also it's like
Sure.
there's a lot of maneuvering by characters and political intrigue and all of that. Now
Hmm.
I would say House of Dragon I like fine, and I kind of just stuck with it because of enjoying kind of that world.
Yeah.
But I think what I would say is, of course, I don't want to be watching something that feels like it's perpetuating misogyny or leaning into it. What I think is sometimes, I guess it just feels true, right? Like, and it's like we live in a patriarchy, right? And it's like, yes, we're not in like the Middle Ages or whatever, like medieval times that this is supposed to be kind of based on. But it's like,
Yep.
and I wouldn't say like that's all the show is about. It's just like obviously because it's a female queen, it definitely comes up. I don't know, there's a lot of fucked up things that happen on the show. And to sort of say, why do I like that? I don't know. I guess it's like it feels interesting in some level. It feels like it's sometimes done in an interesting way or in a new way, kind of like speak to like an old thing. And I do think what I liked about, especially the first couple seasons, like there were a lot of female kind of forward things in terms of even just showing like the brutality of childbirth and like some of the trauma around that and losing a child. Like I would say more things that were centered on women in a way that Game of Thrones hadn't been before. And they've really put this show as a way of like kind of two main female leads that are oppositional, which is also as interesting to me. So it's like I guess I care about it because I like Rhaenyra and I'm interested to see where her story goes. And I haven't read the book, so I actually don't know. So it's like,
Hmm.
and then so just to be like infuriated personally to watch that and see her to be infuriated. And yeah, I feel like that was a bit of a tirade. Does that answer any
No,
of your, does that answer it at all? Yeah.
I mean, it answers it for me. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate what conflict feels like, to be honest. Conflict between two people who deeply respect each other. I'll speak for myself. I deeply respect you and care about you, both as my colleague, but also as my friend. And I find it really fascinating because I can't meet you there. And yet, as two therapists having this conversation, I think it's really interesting. I definitely understand where you're coming from and I can see it. I can draw on my empathy and understand how that might be for you. But then if I'm being authentically myself, no, I find it kind of disgusting. I think it's, at the risk of sounding dramatic, what a surprise, I think it's kind of dangerous. I think it's tone deaf given where we are as a culture, generally speaking, right now. This is just my personal opinion, and to exercise my personal opinion, I just won't watch it, which is fine, right? Like, in no way am I suggesting it should not be made, like, not at all. And I do think that having this conversation is really interesting. It comes up all the time, not particularly Game of Thrones, but conflict comes up a lot in sessions that I have with clients. Sometimes there's conflict with me as the therapist, and that's really interesting because I think often people don't have a chance to experience what healthy conflict feels like, and often we're confused because conflict is not fighting. Like you and I are not fighting. Certainly, I don't feel like we are. We
So,
are simply here looking at each other from a place of respect and compassion. And I'm going, yeah, I just disagree. Right. And so then, as
yeah.
two people who care about each other, how do we move forward in disagreement? And what
Yes.
does it feel like? Like, what does it feel like? You brought this to me, and I totally appreciate that you did. And now I'm like, yeah, I don't like it at all. It's not for me. And you're like, oh, okay. What does it feel like to be in active conflict with me specifically, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah, with you. I kind of didn't really know how you would respond, right? I didn't think it would be as strong as maybe it is. But so I guess I was not really entirely prepared to be like, why do I like this? Or like, how do I defend my position on this? Or like, you know what I
Account
mean?
for
I did not
yourself.
think further than kind of like that scene, you know? So I guess I feel
Yeah.
like a little underprepared, which is like which I don't, well, I don't love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it feels valuable. I guess it's sort of like how do we hear each other and like do we actually have to come to any sort of agreement on it or to share an opinion on it? I guess I'm like, yeah, like what is kind of the end goal? Is it to have like an interesting kind of discussion about this? And like I appreciate that you've like pivoted into like, conflict or like how to
Hmm.
hang in with someone who has a different opinion than you. I guess like I don't have a ton of interest in like convincing you, so it's like it's not a conflict I feel like overly invested in terms of being like, no, like see it my way or whatever.
I think that's why, from my perspective, this is such a perfect example because in this particular case, it's a TV show, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Like in the grand scheme of life, it doesn't matter at all. It touches on some themes that feel very important to me. Absolutely. It touches on things that I hold as values. I think you do as well. But a couple of things you said are so perfect. Like, A, you didn't know there was going to be conflict, which I think is what happens in the world all the time, right? That you're like, hey, let's talk about this thing. And the other person has a reaction. You're like, whoa, okay, hold on. I didn't know that we weren't in agreement. Now I do know we're not in agreement. Now what do we do from there, right? And then the second piece that really struck me is you going, yeah, I don't really have any interest in convincing you. And I think that that is like the gold here because I don't think conflict is about convincing, right? So from the perspective of like, what is our objective? My objective is to hear you and then move forward as friends because I care about you. And I think the idea around resolving conflict, what gets confused is it's not about agreement, actually. It's not about you coming to my side or me coming to your side necessarily. It's more about going, okay, well, from this place of mutual respect, is this a deal breaker? And for me, your feelings about Game of Thrones is not a deal breaker in terms of our relationship, and I'm hoping that it isn't for you either, right? And so then from there, it's like, is it so sensitive that we can't talk about it? And from my perspective, of course we can talk about it. If you want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to talk about it. I feel fine about that, right?
Yeah.
It could be that that's not true. And sometimes in conflict, it's like, okay, listen, this is a little bit radioactive, so maybe we won't continue talking about that. That's fine. It's just about finding the agreements around how to move forward, but not necessarily agreement on the topic. Yeah?
Totally, and I think also even almost being able to explicitly talk about what each person is hoping to get out of it or what we're wanting or what kind of like the underlying feeling is, as opposed to like, I need you to agree and see all of my points or like, yeah, yeah. I guess the one thing I would say is like, knowing you as well as I do and even how you've expressed it, I don't feel like overly judged, but I can't help feeling a bit of that twinge of being like, how can you like this? Like that says something about you if you like this. And
Okay, that's not
that
what I
felt a bit
said.
more, no, I know, but that's what I'm saying. It felt a bit more implied than what you actually said. So that's like the
Mm-hmm.
only part that's sticking with me that feels worth like bringing back to you.
Okay, perfect. So you want to do it in real time?
Sure.
Is that your
Yeah.
concern that I'm going to walk away? Like, jokes aside, that I'm going to walk away from this and go, whoa, I thought Michelle was pretty cool and progressive, but now that I know she likes this, she's like fallen in my esteem, like that kind of idea?
No, I don't think that's what it is exactly. I think maybe because this is like public, right? It's like feels like it might open me up to criticism or something, like having people
Oh,
like side with your view of things, or these are all just like projections or like worries, I would say. I think just coming back to kind of like my own insecurities around like having a disagreement about something specific and feeling like judged for it, even if that's not how the person means it or said it?
yeah. And I think that what you've just touched is one of the reasons, and there are many reasons, but one of the reasons that people avoid conflict as much as most of us do, right? Because it does, I think, invite us to step into a really vulnerable place where it's like, oh, okay, what if I'm the only one who thinks this way? What's that like? But it's interesting that you say that because I anticipate that my perspective is going to be met with much judgment, right? Where it's like, oh my God, why are you making such a big deal out of it? Whatever, right? But I think at the end of the day, the reality is you go away and think about how you feel. I go away and think about how I feel, or we take a moment to think about it. And I mean, I'm not speaking for people. I'm speaking solely for myself,
Yeah.
and I think that my empathy for and compassion for people's perspectives and differences is tolerant enough and flexible enough to go, I don't really get it, but I see you, the person that you are, and I see how you are in the world, and I see how you interact with other people, and I know what your values are. So, given all of that, this is fine, right? Like, it's my understand, but I think the idea is that, like, in a healthy relationship, it's not about like mapping onto each other exactly. And I think that that's another misunderstanding, right? Like, if we're going to be really good friends or romantically involved or whatever, that there has to be this total overlap. And I don't think that's true. Like, in the Venn diagram of the two of us, there's quite a lot of overlap, but often it's the stuff around the edges that's quite rich, right? Where we can see things from a really different perspective. And one of the things I value about you and our relationship is that often I think you see things differently than I do. And I love having these conversations where I walk into it and go, I might not agree with that, but I've never actually even seen it from that perspective. And that's super interesting. And I
Yeah.
think it stretches our ability to hear difference and hear alternative perspectives. And it's not about me jumping onto your train now. It's just about me understanding that there's space for your train alongside my train. And maybe we can like move in the same direction on our separate trains. It's a silly analogy, but yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
valuable.
And I think you are hitting on another thing that is difficult about conflict or why people avoid it is because
Mm-hmm.
like there's this fear that it's like somehow a threat to the relationship, right? Or like that
That's
you're
right.
going to be
That's right.
rejected because your opinion is rejected or not, like you know what I mean, like or just disagreed with, right?
Yeah.
Like the sense of
Yes.
like how
Yes.
do we remain together and be different? right? So, and it's like that is kind of the whole game of relationships is like how do we
Yes.
how do we retain ourselves and also still connect, right? Like in the important
Yes.
ways.
Yes. 100%. And I would argue that it'll be an interesting experiment to see where the algorithm pushes this conversation, because right out of the gate, we were completely in opposite, I would argue, polarized almost positions. And that seems to be what the algorithms love. And to me, the antidote for that is to do what we're doing, which is like hang in as human beings and go beyond that. Go beyond the quick fix almost of like you or me, this or that, black or white, you're on my team or you're not on my team, that kind of idea, and be able to hang in this gray area and then realize that yes, we can move forward together actually. And it's just kind of an interesting thing that we don't necessarily agree on this one thing, right? But that the totality of each of us and the breadth of our relationship is so much more important, I think, and so much richer and much stronger than these little bits where we disagree. And for me, it's not about the fact that we disagree that lets me feel closer to you in our relationship. It's the fact that we can disagree with mutual respect and patience and generosity. I don't care what we're disagreeing about. It's the way we can disagree together, I think, that proves to anybody over time that the relationship is strong and meaningful and has the flexibility to endure. I think that's what we're talking about when I talk to people about relationships and intimacy, and that intimacy doesn't grow from always agreement. That's not how it works. Because if you and I always agree, I don't know if I can trust you to still be with me when we don't agree. And so it's being able to hang in through conflict and get through to a different place and still be together, still remain in contact, that allows us to develop a deeper sense of intimacy, right? And
Yeah.
trust moving forward.
And being able to share the impact of the feeling of
Yeah.
disagreement or any kind of misunderstandings you might have felt or any kind of like sore feelings or like you know what I mean, like to be able to
Yes.
it's like to address it actually, which like you're right, it's like it is vulnerable to kind of say like, oh, like that kind of hurt me a little bit or that whatever, like I feel kind of weird about this or it's like you're like not only are you do you already have like the initial experience of maybe feeling hurt or feeling weird, but you then also have to kind of bring back the feeling to the person, to kind of be like, let's look at this together,
Yeah.
which is like it's not safe to do in every relationship,
Agreed.
right? Like it's
Agreed.
like I feel like so many people have relationships where it's like they felt hurt and they bring that to the person and they feel like they get hurt again, right?
Yes.
And it almost feels worse, right? Because it's like I've actually like you could have hurt me accidentally and really not meant it and whatever, right? But when I say like I'm really hurt and you dismiss me or you like are not able to kind of hang in with that perspective or, take the classic thing of like, well, you did this to me too, or like, like bringing it back to your own self as opposed to like, what the
The
person's
whatabouts.
actually sharing. Yes, the what about me?
Yeah.
What about how
Yeah.
you hurt me too, And it's like,
And you're
sure,
like,
we can
that's
talk about that, but that's not what we're talking about right this second. We get to that in a
exactly.
minute.
All right.
Yeah.
So this went in a different direction, it sounds like, than you were thinking it might, perhaps.
I didn't know
Well,
where it would go, but I was not expecting this, I guess. No.
okay. All right. Amazing. How do you feel about it now?
Yeah, I think I feel okay. Like it's one of those things where I'm a bit of like a slower processor and sometimes things will hit me differently. Like once I'm like alone and things have settled a little bit, I don't feel activated per se. I think I I guess I'm kind of like coming back to or trying to think about like, was there something in particular about like the actual content of what I brought that I wanted to talk about, right? That I missed because of this, right? Like, which is also okay, right? Like, I can be disappointed, or because it wasn't like I had a specific need that I communicated or said like, this is what I'm hoping for, right? But it's sort of like it just like it went into a realm that I was not expecting, I guess is what I will say.
Okay. Well, then what if I make you an offer? In real time, you don't even know what the offer is. So this is like a real life reaction. You can also say no, always, right? Which I also say to clients. It's like sometimes I'll ask for something, and at any time a client can be like, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk about that. It's funny. I feel like you always have to remind people that that's an option. They're like, oh, wait, I can say no. Having said all that, given the respect that I have for you and the care that I feel for you and our relationship, the last time I tried to watch Game of Thrones, it was ages and ages and ages ago. So it makes me wonder, maybe I should give it a try. Maybe I should watch the first episode or whatever with an open mind, a fresh perspective, and then we can meet back and talk about the actual show. Maybe I feel the same, maybe not. Maybe I will change my mind given the differences and the time difference, and
Yeah,
also
I mean,
taking on board everything that you said, right? Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that feels like a kind, nice, generous offer. I'm kind of torn to be like, should you really watch the first Game of Thrones or should you try to watch the first episode of House of the Dragon, which is this new series, right? And it's like,
New
if
one.
I feel,
New one. New one.
new one. Okay, yeah, yeah. I would be totally curious to see because it definitely has a slightly different tone, like where I feel like it's centering
Okay.
certain things differently than it did in Game of Thrones.
Mhm.
So I would be curious to see what you get out of it. And yeah, it's like it's one of those things where having watched the show for like so many hours now, like not just House of Dragon, but just like Game of Thrones, it's like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have such kind of layered views about it, right? Because it's like I can't even tell you how many hours
Yeah.
I've watched of it, right? So it's like I have all these kind of different viewpoints that I guess I've never actually fully expressed because I just watch it and think about it, and that's the end of it. So I am curious to see what kind of comes
Okay.
up for you. We could have a part two.
All right. Well, then let's do that. Part two. I will watch the first episode. What is it for everybody who's watching? What is the name of the actual series? The new series?
House of the Dragon.
All right. I'm down. House of the Dragon. I'll watch an episode. We'll meet back here and we will discuss. And in
Sounds
the
good.
interim, I value you, Michelle. Thank you for hanging in through our conflict.
Yes, of course. I value you too. Appreciate it.
And everybody else, like and subscribe. Please. Thank you.
Yes, as always.